On his 200th day in office, President Trump slapped new tariffs on dozens of countries around the world. Tariffs averaging more than 18%, the highest number in nearly a century. In recent times, the average has been 2 to 3%.
Lots of these packages were destined for the United States, but now they're going to be sent elsewhere.
We've decided to stop shipping to the US because we can't provide clarity to our customers. It's tough to make a decision, especially when it represents a third of your overall revenue.
The Australian fashion brand is making this call after the US president decided to end a long-running tax exemption for global retailers.
That was kind of the way that countries were able to still trade and not be subjected to huge tariffs for the end consumer.
Until now, goods going into the States worth $800 or less weren't taxed. This so-called de minimis exemption is being axed on August 29. Products will now get the tariff associated with their country of origin or a duty ranging from $80 to $200.
Look, I think the simple way to describe it is just utter chaos.
At the start of Donald Trump's second presidency, there was already a 10% tariff on Chinese goods. This was increased in February to curb imports of fentanyl, sparking retaliation from Beijing and an even higher tax rate in March. Then came Liberation Day and a tit-for-tat escalation, igniting a bigger trade war where the tariff rate reached 155%. That de-escalated significantly after officials met in Geneva and later London.
Last day.
Jennifer Bergman is the owner of Westside Kids, an independent New York City toy store founded by her mother.
The toys and the books and the games, they're memories that we all cherish from our childhood.
After 44 years, Westside Kids is closing.
Our ultimate competition is online shopping.
That was her biggest challenge when we met in December. Then the tariffs came.
Where do most of the products in your store come from?
China.
And kind of what percentage?
90%, I'd say.
Big box retailers are better able to absorb tariffs with the ability to buy in bulk and stockpile. By the summer, Bergman's business had taken a big hit.
With the announcement of the tariffs, people just got really scared and stopped spending money.
What if I told you that some of America's biggest corporations, companies that built the modern U.S. economy, are now shifting operations, investments, supply chains, and long-term plans to Africa? Not Asia, not Europe, not South America, Africa, quietly, strategically, and faster than most analysts expected. This shift isn't a coincidence. It isn't charity, and it isn't hype. It is happening because the global economic system is changing, and some of the most powerful U.S. corporations want to position themselves where the next 30 years of global growth will come from. At the same time, the United States faces a rapidly growing debt crisis, and Europe's worsening energy instability is sending shockwaves through global markets. Inflation, high interest rates, unstable supply chains, energy shortages, a global race for minerals. Meanwhile, Africa is offering something the world desperately needs: resources, young population, new markets, new tech ecosystems, and land for manufacturing expansion. So the question is no longer, why would U.S. companies go to Africa? The question is, why wouldn't they? Today we break down the most important global shift you're not hearing enough about, and why Africa is becoming the new center of global business strategy. Welcome to African Spotlight 24. Let's begin. American corporations face three major challenges. 1. The U.S. debt crisis. The United States is dealing with huge financial pressures from decades of borrowing. This means higher interest rates, more expensive loans, reduced corporate spending capacity, slower consumer demand, risk of recession. Corporations need stability. They need growth markets. And right now, many of them are not finding that at home. 2. Rising costs of doing business in America. Labor costs are high, regulations are increasing, taxes are complicated, manufacturing is expensive. Africa, on the other hand, offers growing workforce, competitive labor markets, lower operation costs, expanding free trade zones, business-friendly policies. 3. Competition from Asia. China and Southeast Asia have dominated global manufacturing for decades, but wages are rising there too. Africa is the next frontier, where costs are still low and the potential for long-term ROI is massive. U.S. companies want future markets. Africa has the youngest population in the world. By 2050, Africa will have 2.5 billion people, a booming middle class, massive digital growth, rising demand for consumer products. U.S. corporations know this, and they're moving early. For decades, Africa was boxed into the role of a raw materials supplier, shipping out crude oil instead of refined fuel, minerals instead of batteries, cocoa beans instead of chocolate. But in the last 5 years, a dramatic shift has begun. African governments are forcing value to stay inside the continent. Ghana is refusing to export unprocessed lithium unless local refining plants are built. DR Congo and Zambia launched a joint industrial zone for battery production, bypassing Western processors. Namibia banned the export of unprocessed critical minerals to force local beneficiation. Nigeria is launching SEZs designed to retain petrochemical and manufacturing value. For U.S. corporations facing rising costs, this is not a problem. It's an opportunity. Because instead of buying minerals from middlemen or relying on China's monopoly, they can now build facilities directly inside Africa, gaining cheaper production, faster logistics, customs-free continental trade, AfCFTA, massive consumer markets, access to strategic minerals needed for the next 50 years. This is not outsourcing. This is strategic positioning for the next global industrial cycle. And U.S. companies are not the only ones noticing. Europe sees the same signs. Europe's competitiveness crisis is now structural. Energy bills remain 150% higher than pre-2021 levels. Manufacturing sectors like chemicals, steel, auto parts, and fertilizers are shutting down. Germany, Europe's engine, has officially entered industrial recession. Over 500,000 manufacturing jobs have disappeared. EU companies suddenly need cheaper electricity, cheaper land, cheaper labor, cheaper logistics, fast-growing markets, political access routes to minerals, and Africa is offering all of it in one package. Take Morocco. European car manufacturers like Renault and Stellantis operate massive plants powered partly by solar energy. Output is so efficient that Morocco now exports more cars to Europe than many EU nations. Take Egypt. Its Suez Canal Special Economic Zone is becoming a hotspot for European chemical and electronics companies. Take Namibia and South Africa. EU-funded green hydrogen megaprojects are being built to replace costly fossil imports. Europe's energy crisis, once a disaster, is now turning into Africa's manufacturing boom. Foreign companies aren't just attracted by low costs. They are attracted by the new Africa strategy. Industrialize to stabilize. African governments know instability thrives wherever unemployment thrives. So the new Pan-African vision focuses on industrial zones, cross-border energy pools, infrastructure megaprojects, digital trade systems, regional manufacturing clusters, single visa systems for investors. And the biggest magnet of all, AfCFTA, the world's largest free trade area by population. You build a factory in Kenya, you reach 1.4 billion customers. Rwanda, you reach 1.4 billion customers. Ghana, you reach 1.4 billion customers. US companies understand this. European companies understand this. Even Asian giants understand this. That's why global capital is quietly shifting to Africa while the West battles internal crises. The Pentagon already warned Congress. China controls 80 to 90% of global critical mineral processing. Africa holds the raw materials. China holds the refining. And the US holds neither. So Washington is now sending high-level delegations to African capitals, offering billion-dollar strategic partnerships, rebuilding AGOA frameworks, funding infrastructure to counter China's Belt and Road, encouraging U.S. companies to move production into Africa. America's debt problem makes this even more urgent. As borrowing costs rise, U.S. companies must reduce expenses fast. Africa offers cost savings of up to 70% across multiple sectors. This is not geopolitical charity. This is economic survival. For the first time in modern history, Africa has leverage, real leverage. Europe needs energy. The US needs supply chain diversification. The world needs Africa's copper, cobalt, lithium, graphite, and manganese. Global food supplies need Africa's farmland. And African leaders are finally negotiating from strength. Deals now look like, build the refinery here. We want 40% local ownership. Create 30,000 jobs or no contract. Build infrastructure, not just extraction. No more exploitative mineral agreements. This is Africa's long-awaited economic power shift. If trends continue, expect 1. Massive industrial relocation. U.S., European, and Asian companies will move production to Africa to reduce costs. 2. A new mineral processing revolution. African countries will stop exporting raw minerals and start exporting finished products. 3. A continental manufacturing boom. Automobiles, batteries, solar panels, textiles, fertilizers, electronics, all made in Africa. 4. A global power rebalancing. The world economy will depend on Africa's young workforce and natural resources. 5. Africa becoming a top global investment zone. By 2035, Africa may host more megafactories than Southeast Asia. This is why the West is paying attention, quietly, urgently, strategically. America's rising debt and Europe's ongoing energy crisis are not temporary problems. They are structural turning points. And Africa, once dismissed, has become the world's last major frontier for growth and industrial expansion. That is why major U.S. companies are moving quietly. That is why European manufacturers are relocating steadily. That is why investors are rushing to African markets. Africa is no longer the world's supplier of raw materials. Africa is becoming the world's next industrial and economic powerhouse. The global power shift has already begun. Most people just haven't noticed it yet.